It's not difficult making a gluten-free sourdough starter. All you need is a great gluten and dairy-free all-purpose mix. I recommend Namaste products, but I've had success making a starter with Bob's Red Mill and others. First, I'm adding 100 grams of flour to a wide mouth mason jar. The size of the jar should be at least a pint. Then you'll want to add warm water to the flour. The best temperature is higher than room temp at 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius. What I like to do is add room temperature water to a measuring cup and then slowly add in hot water from the kettle until I get around 85 degrees, and that's why you see me checking the temperature there. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be close. Once the warm water is ready, we're going to add 100 grams of it to our flour and we're going to mix it up. I like to use a knife. It just goes all the way down to the bottom of the jar, and we're just going to mix as well as we can to get as many clumps out of the flour mix. And I like to scrape the sides, scrape off the knife. You can use a whisk or a spoon or a fork. Knife just works for me. And now we're going to cover it with like a tea towel or a coffee filter. Any type of lid that allows your starter to breathe is going to work great. Now we're going to set our starter into a dark cabinet for 18 to 24 hours. Day 2 is the easiest day. All we're going to do is remove our starter from the cabinet, give it a good mix, cover again, and place back into the cabinet for another 18 to 24 hours. You might start to see some bubbles on day 3. If you don't, that's okay. I've been baking for 2 years, so I have a lot of wild yeast in my kitchen. Day 3, you are going to discard half of the mixture. So this is where you can get really technical. You can weigh all of it and then remove half of it, or you can just eyeball it. Eyeballing works, I promise. Through this whole process, I just eyeballed it, and then I added in a fresh 100 grams of the gluten-free flour blend, another 100 grams of 85-degree water. And you can see me pouring directly from the kettle here. I've already checked the temperature, that it's around 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'll give it a good mix. And this is pretty much what we'll be doing the next 4 days with our starter, with some modification to the temperature of the water. And then you'll cover it up just like before and place it in your dark cabinet. You can definitely see here that my starter was bubbly and growing. It went all the way to the top of the lid. And here I am again. I'm just going to eyeball and remove half of the starter. Now I'm putting that warm water in, 100 grams and 100 grams of flour. It's going to start to go fill to the top if you're using a pint jar. And give it a good mix as always. Lid on and put it in the cabinet. It's day 5 now, and again we will discard half of our starter. You can give half of that starter to a friend and they can start their day 5 new starter. Day 5 is when we're going to slow down the fermentation process. So we're going to use cold water, and it's still 100 grams of the filtered water with 100 grams of the fresh gluten-free flour blend. Once it's mixed really well, like always, put the lid on and place it in the cabinet for another 18 to 24 hours. It's day 6 of making our sourdough starter, and you should definitely start to see some bubbles if you haven't seen any yet. We are going to discard half of the starter like before, and again you can save it and give it to a friend, start a new starter as well for yourself if you want to have multiple starters. And then we're just going to add our 100 grams of gluten-free flour and 100 grams of the cold filtered water. Once it's mixed really well, we'll place the cover back on and we'll place it back in the cabinet for 18 to 24 hours. Well, you did it! You made it to day 7. So here we are doing the last steps. We are going to do an extra special test today. See how bubbly and active it is. We're going to do something called the float test to see if our starter is ready. Here I did too big of a chunk, but you can see that it's trying to float, and I scoop a little bit out. I want to get some of the starter right in the middle, and I get a smaller chunk here, and let's take a look and see. Yes, it's floating, so that means it's ready to use in baking. So tomorrow you can bake with your starter on day 8. It's really quick and easy, so if you've made it past day 8, you'll want to go see my next video. Like we've done before, day 7, we discard half of our starter. We add 100 grams of gluten-free flour and 100 grams of cold filtered water. We'll mix it up really well. It gets a little difficult with a smaller jar. My bread recipe requires about 250 grams to 300 grams of sourdough starter, so the best thing to do is to reserve the discard from your day 7 and actually feed that into a new jar. Here I'm showing that I have done this and put it in a new jar and fed it so that I have enough active starter ready to make a loaf tomorrow morning. And we're going to cover it up and it'll be ready to use tomorrow.